You think you're tired now? Wait until you're truly alone. Apologize and maybe I'll let you stay. Gideon's words cut through me like a knife. I stood there, 7 months pregnant, my legs aching from a long day at the office. The living room suddenly felt small, suffocating. I have nothing to apologize for, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He laughed, a cold, harsh sound that made me flinch. Nothing? You're ruining everything, Lark. Our plans, our future. And for what? A crying, needy brat? My name is Lark, and this is the moment I realized I had married a monster. I met Gideon 3 years ago at the law firm where we both worked. He was charming, ambitious, everything I thought I wanted. Our whirlwind romance led to a fairy tale wedding, and I believed I had found my happily ever after. But now, as I stood in our expensively furnished living room, I saw the cracks in the facade. The charm had worn off, revealing a man consumed by his own desires and ambitions. This baby is our future, Gideon, I said, resting a hand on my swollen belly. I thought you'd be excited. He sneered, pacing the room like a caged animal. Excited? About what? Sleepless nights? A career on hold? You've trapped me, Lark. And I won't forget it. I felt a flutter of movement beneath my palm, as if our child was responding to the tension in the room. It gave me strength. I'm going to my parents, I said, moving towards the door. Gideon's hand shot out, gripping my arm. You're not going anywhere. You're my wife, and you'll do as I say. I looked into his eyes, searching for any trace of the man I fell in love with. There was nothing there but cold, hard anger. Let go of me, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. Then, slowly, his fingers uncurled from my arm. Go then, he spat. But don't expect me to welcome you back with open arms. I grabbed my keys and purse, not bothering to pack a bag. As I walked out the door, I heard Gideon's final words. You'll regret this, Lark. I promise you that. I didn't look back. I couldn't, because deep down, I knew that the only thing I truly regretted was not leaving sooner. The morning sickness hit me like a tidal wave. I barely made it to the bathroom, retching violently into the toilet. As I slumped against the cool porcelain, I heard Gideon's footsteps approaching. For God's sake, Lark, can't you keep it down? I have an important meeting today. I wiped my mouth, struggling to stand. I'm sorry, I can't exactly control it. Gideon leaned against the doorframe, his lip curled in disgust. This is why I didn't want kids. Look at you. Pathetic. His words stung, but I was too exhausted to argue. I shuffled past him, heading for the kitchen to make some ginger tea. Don't forget to clean that up, he called after me. I'm not living in a pigsty because you can't handle being pregnant. As I waited for the kettle to boil, I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. I gripped the counter, trying to steady myself. Gideon, I called out weakly. I don't feel well. Can you help me? Silence. Gideon. I tried again, louder this time. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, briefcase in hand. I'm leaving. Deal with it yourself. The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone and trembling. Hours later, I lay on the couch, a cold compress on my forehead. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister, Ivy. How are you feeling? Mom's worried. I hesitated, then typed back. Not great. Gideon's not much help. Ivy's response was immediate. Want me to come over? Before I could reply, another wave of nausea hit. I stumbled to the bathroom, barely making it in time. As I rinsed my mouth, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror. Pale, drawn with dark circles under my eyes. Was this really me? The strong, independent woman who'd graduated top of her class? My phone buzzed again. Ivy. I'm on my way. Hang in there, sis. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by shame. Why did I need my little sister to take care of me? Why couldn't my husband step up? I made my way back to the couch, cradling my growing belly. I'm sorry, little one, I whispered. I promise I'll figure this out. For both of us. As I waited for Ivy, I realized something had shifted. The illusion of my perfect marriage was crumbling, revealing an ugly truth beneath. And for the first time, I allowed myself to wonder, was this really the life I wanted for my child? The moment I stepped into my childhood home, the tension in my shoulders eased. Mom enveloped me in a warm hug, her familiar scent of lavender and home-baked cookies washing over me. Oh, sweetheart, she murmured, pulling back to look at me. You look exhausted. Dad appeared behind her, his face etched with concern. Let's get you settled, Lark. Your old room's all ready. As I sank onto my old bed, the floodgates opened. Between sobs, I poured out everything, Gideon's coldness, his cruel words, the constant belittling. Mom and Dad listened, their faces a mix of shock and sorrow. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" Mom asked, her voice thick with emotion. I shook my head, unable to meet their eyes. I was ashamed. I thought I could fix it. Dad's hand on my shoulder was steady, comforting. "This isn't your fault, Lark. That man, he doesn't deserve you or this baby." The next few days were a blur of rest, home-cooked meals, and long talks with my family. Ivy and Hazel rallied around me, their unwavering support a balm to my battered spirit. One evening, as we sat on the porch swing, Hazel asked the question I'd been dreading. "Are you going back to him?" I stared out at the setting sun, my hand resting on my swollen belly. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me hopes he'll change, that he'll be the man I thought I married." Ivy snorted. "And the other part?" "Knows that's a fantasy," I finished quietly. Mom joined us, settling into a nearby chair. "Lark, honey, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest." She paused, her eyes serious. "Has Gideon ever hit you?" The question hung in the air, heavy and ominous. "No," I said finally. "But sometimes I think he wants to." The silence that followed was deafening. "You can't go back," Dad's voice came from the doorway. We all turned to look at him, surprised by the steel in his tone. "That man is poison, Lark. You and that baby deserve better." As I looked at the faces of my family, Mom's quiet strength, Dad's unwavering support, my sister's fierce protectiveness, something shifted inside me. The fog of confusion and self-doubt began to lift, replaced by a growing resolve. "You're right," I said, my voice stronger than it had been in months. "I can't go back, but I need to face him to end this on my terms." Mom squeezed my hand. "Whatever you decide, we're here for you. Always." For the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be hard, but I wasn't alone. And that made all the difference. The key turned in the lock with a finality that made my heart race. I pushed open the door to Gideon's apartment, steeling myself for what lay ahead. The living room was immaculate, just as I'd left it. But as I moved towards the bedroom, a chill ran down my spine. The door was ajar, and even from the hallway, I could see the chaos within. Our bedroom was unrecognizable. Clothes strewn everywhere, drawers upended, my vanity mirror shattered. In the center of it all stood Gideon, his back to me, shoulders heaving. "What have you done?" I whispered, horror and anger battling for dominance in my voice. He whirled around, eyes wild. "What have I done? You left me, Lark. You ran away like a coward." I stood my ground, one hand protectively over my belly. "I left because I had to. For my safety, for our child's safety." Gideon laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Safety? From what? I've given you everything." "Everything except respect, kindness, support," I countered, my voice growing stronger. "You've made it clear you don't want this baby, that you resent me for being pregnant." He advanced towards me, fists clenched. "You trapped me. This was never part of the plan." I backed away, my heart pounding. "Plans change, Gideon. Life changes. But you're incapable of adapting, of thinking about anyone but yourself." "How dare you?" he snarled, grabbing my arm. "After everything I've done for you." I wrenched free, anger overriding my fear. "Done for me? You've done nothing but tear me down, make me doubt myself." "This isn't love, Gideon. It's control." For a moment he looked stunned. Then his face hardened. "If that's how you feel, then get out. Take your brat and go." "Gladly," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce." "Divorce?" Gideon's laugh was ugly. "You think you can leave me that easily? I'll ruin you, Lark. No one walks away from me." As I turned to leave, his threat hanging in the air, I caught sight of myself in a remaining shard of mirror. The woman staring back at me was different, stronger, more determined. I barely recognized her, but I liked what I saw. "Goodbye, Gideon," I said, not bothering to look back. "I hope you find peace someday." I walked out of the apartment, out of the building, and into the warm sunshine. For the first time in months, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead would be challenging, but as I placed a gentle hand on my belly, I knew with absolute certainty that I was making the right choice. For myself and for my child. The contractions hit like a freight train, jolting me awake in the dead of night. I gasped, clutching my swollen belly as panic set in. This was it. Rowan was coming. "Mom!" I called out, my voice shaky. "It's time." The house erupted into controlled chaos. Dad grabbed the pre-packed hospital bag, while Mom helped me to the car. Ivy and Hazel, bleary-eyed but excited, promised to meet us there. The ride to the hospital was a blur of pain and anticipation. Between contractions, a nagging thought persisted. Gideon should be here. But as another wave of pain washed over me, I pushed the thought aside. He'd made his choice. Hours later, exhausted and drenched in sweat, I heard the most beautiful sound in the world, Rowan's first cry. The doctor placed him on my chest, and I felt my world shift on its axis. "Hello, little one," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I'm your mom." As I held Rowan, marveling at his tiny fingers and button nose, a fierce love unlike anything I'd ever known surged through me. In that moment, I knew I'd move heaven and earth for this child. The next few days were a whirlwind of visitors, nurses, and sleepless nights. My family rallied around us, their support unwavering. Dad couldn't stop grinning, proudly showing off pictures of his grandson to anyone who'd look. Mom was a godsend, teaching me the ropes of motherhood with patience and love. On the day we were set to leave the hospital, a nurse approached with a strange expression. "Mrs. Holloway, there's a man here claiming to be your husband. He's demanding to see the baby." My heart dropped. "Gideon, I don't want to see him," I said firmly. "He's not welcome here." The nurse nodded sympathetically. "I understand. Security will escort him out." As we packed up to leave, I caught a glimpse of Gideon being led away, his face a mask of fury. A shiver ran down my spine, but I pushed the fear aside. I had more important things to focus on now. Back at my parents' house, as I settled Rowan into his crib, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but looking at my son's peaceful face, I knew it would be worth it. "It's just you and me now, little one," I whispered, gently stroking his cheek. "But don't worry, we've got this." As I closed the nursery door, I caught sight of myself in the hallway mirror. The woman staring back at me was different, stronger, more determined. A mother. And for the first time in a long while, I felt truly, unequivocally happy. The law office felt suffocating as I sat across from Gideon, divorce papers between us. His eyes, once charming, now burned with a mixture of rage and desperation. "You can't do this, Lark," he hissed, pushing the papers away. "Think about our future, about Rowan." I steeled myself, remembering Rowan's innocent face. "I am thinking about Rowan. That's why I'm here." Gideon's lawyer cleared his throat. "Mr. Holloway, I advise you to consider the terms. They're quite generous, given the circumstances." "Generous?" Gideon scoffed. "She's trying to ruin me." I leaned forward, my voice low but firm. "No, Gideon. You did that yourself." His face contorted with fury. "You ungrateful bitch. After everything I've done for you." "Mr. Holloway," my lawyer interrupted, "I suggest you watch your language." Gideon ignored her, his attention fixed on me. "You'll never make it without me, Lark. You're nothing." I felt a calm settle over me, a stark contrast to the turmoil in Gideon's eyes. "That's where you're wrong. I'm everything without you." His hand slammed on the table, making everyone jump. "I'll fight this. I'll take everything, including Rowan." The threat hung in the air, heavy and ominous. But I was prepared. "Actually," I said, reaching into my bag, "you won't." I pulled out a small recorder and pressed play. Gideon's voice filled the room, spewing vile threats and admissions of his manipulative behavior. The color drained from his face as he listened. "Where did you get that?" he whispered, all bravado gone. "It doesn't matter," I replied, stopping the recording. "What matters is that I have it. And if you fight me on this divorce or try to take Rowan, I won't hesitate to use it." The silence that followed was deafening. Gideon's lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently in his ear. I watched as the realization of his defeat settled in Gideon's eyes. With shaking hands, he reached for the pen. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" he muttered bitterly. "I had to," I said softly. "For Rowan. For myself." As Gideon signed the papers, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't over. I knew he wouldn't give up easily, but this was a crucial first step. When we stood to leave, Gideon grabbed my arm. "This isn't over, Lark," he growled. I met his gaze, unflinching. "Yes, it is. Goodbye, Gideon." As I walked out of the office, head held high, I felt a surge of strength. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, I was truly free. And I was ready to face whatever came next. The office buzzed with tension as I walked in, heads turning and whispers following in my wake. It was my first day back at work since the divorce, and Gideon's smear campaign was in full swing. "Did you hear?" I overheard one colleague murmur. "She trapped him with the baby, then took him for everything." I held my head high, ignoring the stares and making my way to my office. As I settled in, my phone buzzed with a message from Ivy. "Stay strong, sis. Remember who you are." Mid-morning, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Gideon's voice, loud and angry, carried through the walls. Where is she? I want to speak to Lark now. Heart pounding, I stood ready to face him. But before I could move, our firm's senior partner, Margaret, intercepted him. Mr. Holloway, you need to leave immediately, she said, her voice steel. You don't understand, Gideon snarled. She's ruining my reputation with lies. Margaret's reply was cold. The only one ruining your reputation is you, Gideon. We've seen the evidence. My breath caught. The recording. Someone must have leaked it. Gideon's face paled. What evidence? She's manipulating you all. Enough. Margaret's voice cut through his protests. Security will escort you out. And Gideon? Don't bother coming back. You're fired. The silence that followed was deafening. As security led Gideon away, his eyes met mine through the glass of my office. The hatred I saw there sent a chill down my spine. Moments later, Margaret knocked on my door. Lark, I think we need to talk. Over the next hour, I laid bare the truth of my marriage to Gideon. Margaret listened, her expression a mix of sympathy and anger. I'm so sorry you went through that, she said when I finished. But I want you to know we stand with you. Your job is secure, and we'll do everything we can to protect you from any further harassment. Tears pricked my eyes. Thank you, I whispered. As word spread through the office, colleagues stopped by, offering support and apologies for believing Gideon's lies. The tide had turned. That evening, as I picked up Rowan from my parents, Dad hugged me tight. How are you holding up, sweetheart? I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. I'm okay, Dad. Actually, I'm better than okay. Looking at Rowan, giggling in Mom's arms, I felt a surge of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, I truly believed we'd be all right. As we sat down to dinner, surrounded by the love of my family, I realized that this wasn't just an ending. It was a new beginning, and I was ready for it. The autumn breeze rustled through the leaves as I pushed Rowan's stroller through the park. 2 years had passed since the divorce, and life had settled into a new, beautiful rhythm. Mama, look! Rowan pointed excitedly at a squirrel scampering up a tree. I smiled, marveling at his wonder. I see it, sweetheart. Isn't it quick? As we rounded a corner, I froze. Gideon stood a few yards away, looking older and somehow smaller than I remembered. Our eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. He took a hesitant step forward. Lark, I instinctively moved in front of Rowan's stroller. What are you doing here, Gideon? He raised his hands, a gesture of peace. I'm not here to cause trouble. I wanted to apologize. Skepticism warred with curiosity inside me. Apologize? Gideon nodded, his eyes downcast. I've been in therapy, trying to understand why I did what I did. I know it doesn't excuse anything, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. I studied him, searching for any sign of manipulation. But all I saw was a broken man, finally facing his demons. I appreciate that, I said carefully. But I hope you understand that doesn't change anything between us. He nodded, a sad smile on his face. I know. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, and thank you. For what? For being strong enough to leave. For showing me the man I don't want to be anymore. With that, he turned and walked away. I watched him go, a complex mix of emotions swirling inside me. Mama, who that? Rowan's small voice brought me back to the present. I knelt beside him, stroking his cheek. Just someone Mama used to know, sweetheart. But it's okay now. As we continued our walk, I felt a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying lift from my shoulders. Gideon no longer had any power over me. Not my thoughts, not my fears, not my future. That evening, as I tucked Rowan into bed, I looked around the cozy apartment we now called home. Photos of our little family, Rowan, my parents, Ivy, and Hazel, adorned the walls. My law degree hung proudly next to a picture of me at my recent promotion celebration. Mama loves you so much, I whispered to Rowan, kissing his forehead. Love you, Mama, he mumbled sleepily. As I closed his door, I caught sight of myself in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back at me was strong, confident, and at peace. She had weathered the storm and come out stronger on the other side. I smiled at my reflection, feeling a surge of pride and hope. The future stretched out before us, full of possibilities. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where it would lead.